So I think the challenges that come with learning a piece this new are that there isn't this huge catalog of recordings and performance practice and things that you can kind of fall back on, especially when you need to learn a role in sort of a timely manner. It makes learning the piece difficult in that way that you don't have any reference to go off of, but that is also kind of the thing that's nice about it. You don't have as many restraints on, what you want to do with the music and with your character. So it's the challenge, and it's also kind of the benefit of doing this music.
This opera, in and of itself, takes on a different perspective even from the other contemporary opera works I've done. Nico Muhly's language is incredibly individualistic in the way that he writes. The way he writes every character, he associates with different instruments in the orchestra. I'm the trombone, which makes sense if you look at me. But it's really, really interesting to see the way that he juxtaposes my vocal line often to the orchestra, where I'll be singing somewhere in a different area of tonal language, key land, I'm in minor, they're in major, anything like that, just to show the prophet's ulterior motive. It's really been incredible to get to experience that through the music, because when I first got the score, I was like, I'm singing a half step away from the orchestra the whole time. How am I supposed to do that? But now getting to do that, the music so informs the drama in that way. It's been a really incredible experience.
I think one of the biggest challenges of this show compared to shows in the typical canon like Puccini, Mozart, Verdi, is that it is such a through composed piece rather than the traditional aria, duet, aria, trios. So the piece really rides along, and you kind of find yourself in a way where it's more like speech, because it is really trying to tell the story through like truly organic matter of speaking and empathizing with the characters. It's been an interesting challenge, as you can tell that the composition was made in software like Sibelius or Finale, where instead of the composer thinking of things through his mind and sitting at a piano, you can tell that he had a MIDI keyboard and was able to put things in. So when the piano reduction, while it still sounds really great, you can really see the piece come to life with the orchestra, and you can hear what Nico Muhly was trying to emulate with his very modern use of composition.
Ruth's story, I think first and foremost, is a story of finding autonomy. She, in this opera, has gone through a great deal of trauma and loss. She, in the sort of before the opera happens, she has lost both of her children, one to accidental drowning and the other to medical neglect, which has led her into a state of a deep, deep depression and almost a regression of her mental state. And it's really, really difficult to play a role like this and not fall into, teetering into making her seem crazy, not making a mockery of mental illness. It's really having to focus on her vulnerability, her experience, and trying to play that in a way that is respectful to her.
So I think one thing that is really interesting about the prophet is he doesn't change much. What changes from the beginning of the opera to the end of the opera is he loses 2 wives and he gets 1 kid back. But I think that's one of the things about sociopathy, right, is you're not affected, the empathy's just not there. And so even when there's this confrontation scene at the end that's incredibly emotionally loaded, it's really incredible that he doesn't have any solo lines after the end of Ruth's funeral. There's no redeeming at all for this character. It really is just someone who is so stuck on whether it be themselves or their religion, and probably a combination thereof, that things don't really change. And that's one of the best things about the whole opera, is really the ending. Is there's this hymn that comes back. There's hymns throughout the opera that are really, really powerful. I grew up in a Baptist church. I've sung these hymns before. And it's the way that the last scene is interlaced with Eliza's final line being, "Let's see." She doesn't believe, or in my mind, she doesn't believe that this is all going to stick together forever. And that's, I think that's the hope in it. Not for my character personally, but that's the hope to be seen, is that my character ends up losing.
Coming into being an opera singer, I was very heavily torn between politics and music. I majored in political science and music in undergrad, and what really brought me at such a standstill between the two in choosing was whether I wanted to lead the efforts in empathizing with people and finding their voices to be heard, or sharing stories for them to feel compassion and that their stories are seen, not just talked about in the halls of Congress. And so performing this role has been such an interesting combination of, looking at firsthand accounts, making sure that I am being very, very true to themselves, and remembering that they really are real people. We're not just telling a fairy tale or sharing someone's thoughts that they created the story in their head, but rather we are sharing real events and things that were struggles of people now, not 100, 300, 400 years ago, but of people who are still living. And it's finding your own connections and seeing the earnesty of these women living lives that are very highly controlled, and thinking about how to navigate that in a more real sense than just thinking of them as others. You are one of them.
So this is by far and away the hardest music I have ever worked on in my life. There are many moments in this opera where it feels like you're pulling notes out of thin air. The orchestral music is very atmospheric at times and doesn't give you a lot to go off of. It's not tonal in the least bit. So that has been a real challenge for me to trust myself, that I've learned the notes, trust myself without having to rely on an orchestra or even the other singers around me, because there's really nothing that you can go off of in many instances. It also has allowed me to sort of explore different notation of music. He notates it as a whole note or a half note with a Z written through the stem or through the note. And when he notates that, there's a bunch of text, like full sentence underneath. And you start slow, and then you gain speed and dynamics as you go along until you're cut off. So there's no set rhythm, there's no set dynamic. It's very speech-like, and it kind of creates this cool effect of like this frantic ensemble of kind of a stream of consciousness of thought.
So I think the key takeaway and the biggest learning experience I've had is having to wholly separate yourself from the character. You can't walk home with the prophet on your back. It's one of these things that I'm not a method actor. I've never claimed to be a method actor. I'm not that good of an actor. I'm all right. But you can't walk home in that, just like I did Frank Morant a while ago, and you can't walk home in Frank. I had to really learn how to act that's one of the things I've caught myself saying a ton to myself, to my colleagues, is we just need to act. There's no like real emotion that you of course should be portraying emotion, but it can't be from here, it has to be outward. And I think that that's been an incredible learning experience. As far as the music goes, my musicianship skills have gone through the roof. With modern contemporary opera, it is the only way, in most opera, it's the only way to learn it. Sit in front of the piano with the metronome and figure it out. It's been really, really incredible to get to do that with a score that is as wonderfully woven together as the one we've been presented with. It's a really neat experience.
I think this show will be instrumental in my career by finding how to be musical with a piece of paper. Shows are often able to have so many references. We live in an age where we are so fortunate to have dozens and dozens of recordings of every show we'd ever want to be in. And to perform a show that, for the most part, is just a piece of paper and bringing that to life. It's similar to reading your favorite book and then watching the movie. You have to find how to really work well with what the writer intended, but also quite literally bring it to life and bring these 2D notes and rhythms and words on the page into a 3D environment and into real people. We all have experienced times where we have felt alone. We've all experienced times where we have felt othered, and to find comfort in yourself is a really big challenge to have, and this show can help you a little bit in finding that.